Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. We got a good topic for you today. Straightforward, let's do it. What's the scariest thing that's ever happened with you? A little not safe for work. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Wife and I took a dark exit toward our neighborhood. Whole back seat full of bags cause we went shopping at the mall. There's a red light at the intersection once you get off the exit, and we pull up to this tinted-ass Oldsmobile. They were in the right lane to go straight or turn right, and we were in the left lane to turn left. Nobody is around, maybe 10 at night. I turn left and look in my rear view, and it's the car that was next to us a bit back. I pull in my driveway and just had a really weird feeling, so I told my wife I'm gonna reverse and back around the block. She thinks it's weird as hell, but as we're reversing, this dude is walking towards us from that Oldsmobile parked around the corner. I dip the F out and make it look like I was just turning around and drove like a mile away before heading back. Just had this gut feeling, man. Who knows what would have happened, but it was scary as F nonetheless. Was at a train station that was empty, and I was sitting down waiting for a train, and a man walks over with a bag, opens it, and takes out a shotgun and points it at me, and I just stare at him. He then says, "You're not scared, are you?" Then puts the shotgun back in the bag, then walks out of the train station. Actually not sure if that was the scariest or weirdest, or if I was even scared. I was 29. I was having chest pains. They were reminiscent of when I was younger and rushed to the hospital just for it to be heartburn. I started treating for that, but got to the point I couldn't move. I was sent home from work and went to my doctor. I described everything and said it just felt like a bad heartburn. She starts looking at stuff and treating me for GERDs. Just as she's about to send me on my way, she's like, "Let's do an EKG." After the results, she brought in the big doc, who agreed with her, and they said they want to keep me overnight for observation. I get there, and they hook me up to a ton of devices, test, start medicating me. All they told me before I fell asleep from the meds was I had an enlarged and weakened left ventricle. It's now maybe 3 a.m. I'm awoken to the creepiest looking doctor ever. He had this skeleton thin body, but with a round pot belly. Think Farnsworth from Futurama. He was bald, but with this greasy, stringy hair that was like long, and he draped a few over his head. Meanwhile, I am still half drugged out and afraid of what's going on. He pulls up a chair and asks if I know what's going on. He says I had a nibble of a heart attack, using his pointer and thumb to indicate very small. He explains something about the numbers, and if they hit a certain number, it indicates heart attack, and mine hit the number directly next to it. So let's say 10 means heart attack, I hit a 9. Bear in mind, my dad died of a heart attack when he was 39. I'm laying there freaking out. Everyone I know is asleep, so no one to talk to. I'm too drugged out to do anything. I just pushed the button for more drugs to go back to sleep. They did a heart cath and said my arteries were clean, and months later found I had a flu-like virus that went untreated, so it reached my heart before my body fought it off. I had gone to a MedExpress place a month before because I was sick with the flu-like symptoms, but they lasted 2 weeks. The doc there said, "It's the flu. You're young. You'll get over it," without doing any tests. I had to wear a heart defibrillator for about 4 months. After that, and on heart meds for life. All because the express doc was too lazy to test anything. But that night, shift doctor looked like death, and I thought he was coming to tell me I died. The scan came back, and we found a mass. We'd like you to come in to talk to the doctor today or tomorrow. You should see if someone can drive for you, as you may be upset afterwards. Can I come in next week? I have a trip planned. The doctor says you should come in today, anytime, and we will clear an appointment for you. Oof. Well, I can't really imagine a worse phone call to get than that. I mean, you hit all the nails on the head right there. Pretty bad. Was driving home from girlfriends late one night, like 12 or 1, rural Pennsylvania. coming down a winding wooded road with only a few houses, mostly woods. Girl covered in blood comes running into the street screaming and waving her arms. I crack my window. She's yelling, "He's gonna kill me! I need a ride, let me in!" I'm 17 at the time. I don't know what's going on. Is someone waiting in the woods to kill me and steal my car? Does she really need help? I don't know. I drive off, get about a mile or two down the road and call the police. Let them know what's happening and where I am. They say they're on their way. I turn around and drive back a little closer. I want to help, but I'm terrified. Cops get there. Go check it out. I drive down and follow. No one around. No sign of anyone or anything. Just vanished. Cops said they'll hang around and keep a lookout, but I should leave. And that was that. Never heard anything else or found out what happened. I also was mugged and had a hunting knife held in my throat when I was 13 and lived in New York. Last year I fell down the stairs at my apartment and injured my back. My legs were numb and I couldn't move them, and for a moment I thought I had paralyzed myself. Rushed to the ER via ambulance and slowly regained feelings in my legs. Me and my dog were attacked in March. I was walking my dog with my mom when a big dog came up and shoved his jaw around my dog and began shaking him. I wrestled my dog out of the other's jaw and picked him up, getting bit twice. I was just afraid for my dog's safety. My mom restrained me. The other dog, which didn't even attack her, I was rushed to the hospital and was in bandages for a week. The bites weren't serious and my dog was fine. I just felt fear from the bottom of my soul for my dog. So happy he is at home, safe right now. Was walking with two former female friends. A dude just grabbed one by the hair and started pulling her away. The other girl just started to walk forward faster like she didn't notice. So I turned back and grab him. He stabs me twice in the stomach. I slam him as hard as I could on the pavement. We both ended up in the hospital. I fractured his skull and broke 2 of his ribs. I easily could have died that night, and neither of those friends visited me in the hospital. A small evil part of me wishes I just kept walking and called the cops. There's a trigger warning here regarding parents terrorizing their children. Dad was a combat vet with PTSD. He had injuries during the war. He had a particularly bad vehicular accident when I was about 9, and he nearly died. So, he had some further trauma there and was physically in a lot of pain on top of everything else. He self-medicated with alcohol, suffered from depression, tended to be controlling, and used threats of violence to make sure no one in the household ever stepped a toe out of line. If he said, "Don't cross this line," and you stepped toward it, you were punished for thinking about it. Anyway, by all accounts, was an AH most of his life, though he had a charming mask that he could wear when it suited him. At home, we walked on eggshells all the time and thought it was normal. Anyway, he did this thing where he'd patrol the house of an evening with one of the home defense items in hand after everyone else was in bed. It was more or less routine, but was something he did when his anxiety was particularly high. One night, Mom tended to work late. He shut off the television. I heard him actually put around in the chamber, not usual. Then, he did the usual. Checked the television, the front porch, locked the front door, checked the back porch and the doors, go room by room through the house. When he got to my door, he stood at the front and the foot of my bed for the longest time, looking at me. I was pretending to be asleep. I could hear him move around a bit, but I didn't dare look. I don't think I had ever been so terrified, and I couldn't explain why I was so scared. It's not like he'd never patrolled the house before, right? It was just that there was something off that night. He couldn't have been more than a few minutes standing there, but it felt like hours. After a while, he walked down to my brother's room and stood in his doorway for a long time too, before finally going back to his own room and turning the TV back on. Although I didn't actually see it, I believe he aimed at me and was possibly my brother that night. I don't know why he changed his mind. I'm just glad we didn't end up on the evening news. I was 10 years old and spending the weekend at my grandfather's ranch in the Santa Cruz Mountains. I had walked about half a mile with my dad to a stream to do some fishing, and a yellow jacket landed on my hand. I nervously asked my dad what to do, and he told me to stay still when it stung me. I turned to walk towards my dad when my foot sunk down into what was a nest of yellow jackets, and they swarmed and attacked me. At the time, my dad and I, didn't know they were yellow jackets. I thought they were bees. My dad was allergic to bees and was yelling at me to run. Running back, I was being stung everywhere, body, face, head, inside of mouth, and finally reached the house, where my stunned boyfriend and my stunned mom saw what was happening. She lifted me up and carried me into the bathroom and shower, blasting the water and swatting at the remaining yellow jackets who were in my hair and clothes. After that, the next thing I remember is being in the hospital. To this day, I see a yellow jacket, wasp, or any other stinging insect, I will step, swat, spray, whatever I have available to take the effort out. One evening about 10 years ago, my girlfriend at the time and I were traveling on a 2-lane interstate in the rural part of Alabama. The sun had set, but it wasn't all of the way dark yet. All I could see was a mostly dark yet still slightly pink sky and the glare of headlights in the oncoming lane. There was a semi-truck immediately to my right and a car behind him and a pickup truck in front of him. Nothing out of the ordinary, until I noticed that one set of headlights from the oncoming lane looked out of place. Wait, maybe they're just topping a hill in the distance and have their brights on. Boy, was I wrong. There was a car going 120 plus miles per hour in my lane. It was on us before I even fully processed what was happening. So fast that I was unsure of what the best decision was. I'm blocked in by this semi on my right. Do I go left and launch my car into the median going 75 miles per hour? Or do I not turn at all and hope this lunatic goes and launches around me on the shoulder of the road? Just when we were about to brace for impact, the semi-truck driver jerked his truck to the far right side of the road, putting most of his truck in the grass. But he gave me enough room to move to the right and just missed the car screaming towards us. I yanked my steering wheel to the right, squealed tires, but I maintained control. I'm glad I didn't play chicken with that car, because he never budged out of the lane I was in. It was the most intense, near-death experience I've ever had. My girlfriend cried the rest of the way home. My daughter was born a few weeks premature and couldn't breathe on her own. The hospital we were at only had a level 2 NICU, so they life-flighted her to a hospital with a better NICU. During this time, my wife's bleeding wasn't stopping and was pushing a lot of clots. Plus, she's emotional because we didn't know what was going on with our daughter. They ended up driving my wife over to the same hospital as my daughter, and I had to drive by myself along with my anxiety and thoughts. I've had knives and guns pulled on me, and I nearly shot someone. I was more scared during this than at any of those incidents. All's good, though. My daughter was out of the NICU after a week and a half, and the hospital fudged the paperwork, so my wife didn't have to go home before our daughter. Since we met our deductible before this we knew we ended up paying nothing, and insurance ate the $120,000. Life flight and NICU is surprisingly pricey and well worth it. I'm certainly glad that it ended up being a happy ending for you guys, And glad you have your happy, beautiful, healthy family. When I was 14, I was walking home from a friend's house at like 10 p.m., and a car with 4 grown men pulled up next to me, asking me to get in their car, and when I told them I couldn't do that, the guys in the back seat started getting out. Luckily, I was still close enough to my friend's house that I was able to run back. I still think about that day so often. I was at Busch Gardens in 2010 on a huge ride that swivels back and forth and builds momentum until it completely flips over. When it started gaining momentum, this lady near me started shaking, seizing maybe, and blood started dripping off from her nose. We were on one of the ends of the ride, screaming at the operators. I don't think they could have stopped it if they tried, even if they did hear us. Everyone was screaming out of their minds. When the ride was on the verge of rolling, it stalled to where the people on the other side of the ride were directly below us, and the blood from her nose was dripping on the people on the other side of the ride. It was terrifying, and I will never go on one of those rides ever again.